the draft version of the national security legislation for Hong Kong, which laid out the overall framework of the law. And with the support of all walks of social life in Hong Kong, we expect that this security law may be enacted soon and will be implemented to improve the safety and safeguard prosperity in Hong Kong. As Carrie Lam has pointed out, that there are still some parliamentary members on the opposition side who are hyping and touting the negatives of this law, and so that is why today in our program we have invited two members of the Legislative Council of Hong Kong. They are Kuan-yiu and Hak-kan. So Hak-kan is well known by viewers and friends on the mainland, and he has on many different occasions fought against the opposition, and he was once stabbed while he was marketing his views on the street. And the other legislative council member, Hak-kan, is the youngest district council member in Hong Kong's history, and since elected as member of the Legislative Council, they have both on many different occasions expressed their support to the pro-establishment policies, and we are connecting them on video. So good morning, Mr. Ho and Mr. Chan, and please say hello to our viewers. Good morning. Good morning. I'm Hak-kan. So you're both working for the Legislative Council, and one is in the office and the other is in your home. So the first question I want to ask you, as I laid out the context of the situation in Hong Kong, what do you think is the most important responsibility for members of the Legislative Council in Hong Kong as you are? Mr. Ho, please. As a member of the Legislative Council in Hong Kong as you are, I think our responsibility is to maintain a close contact with the residents in Hong Kong. And we have to understand what is the mainstream opinion in a society, and we have to focus on the key points of public opinion so that we can feed back to our legislative efforts and improve the well-being of the society. And in the meantime, we have to safeguard the basic law in Hong Kong. The second most important responsibility and also the challenge is that how to bravely, efficiently implement the basic law and fulfill our duties as members of the Legislative Council. Thank you very much, Mr. Ho, and Mr. Chen, please. In my opinion, I think as a member of the Legislative Council, you have to be true to yourself and also be loyal to the responsibilities of the legislature, and also we have to pass legislations for the good of the public, and the effective running of the Legislative Council is a must for social success. But over the past few months, we have seen this process disrupted by social riots, and as a member of the Legislative Council, I have a responsibility to unite all the views of the pro-establishment members so that we can run the legislature very smoothly. So this is our responsibility. All right, our viewers are leaving comments that your Mandarin are very standard, and so we talked this notion of security, and this is very important, and so I'm also concerned about the personal safety of both of you, and everybody is having a lot of concern on the personal safety of Ho Kuan-yiu. And we learned from the news that last month you received a letter containing some poisonous powders in the envelope, and how is the development of this incident? So the investigation is still going on. I don't think it can be discovered soon, and it's a common occurrence here in Hong Kong. We have to be very careful, and we have some concerns. And as you might have learned, that there were some similar incidents in the riots. There were beatings of ordinary residents on the streets, and so sending me letters is not that scary, but I do attach a lot of significance to my personal safety. So when I go to activities outdoors, I tend to select those safe places. So it's very difficult, and I hope the very best of you. And so, Mr. Chen, and you are nodding your heads. And how has that affected your personal safety? Do you have similar concerns? So I know that Ho's representative office has received such letter, and I share the same anger because, it's unimaginable that those kind of things could happen in a civilized land of Hong Kong. And when an incident broke out, I made a call to Mr. Ho immediately, and I asked him if there's anything that I could do to help, because I'm also a fellow member of the Legislative Council, and so when such incident broke out, I think we need to work together. And I also called the security office, and I urged them to guarantee the personal safety of Mr. Ho, and also we need to spread the message out. And over the past half year, the pro-democracy the pro-establishment offices have been sabotaged and damaged, and we have encountered 100 such incidents, and my office has been damaged for 5 or 6 times. So the thugs, they have truly disrupted the pace of our work, and most notably, they have created an unfair election environment, and we do not want to see that this environment continues in the upcoming election in September. So you mentioned that there were 100 times of such damage. Do you have any countermeasures? So that is why now in the office we have some surveillance cameras, we have some security measures. In the meantime, we have strengthened the personal safety measures for our members, and I hope that in the future, if there is more similar cases, we can be better prepared. So now let's talk about national security and talking about the pace of national security law. I have learned that Mr. Ho and Mr. Chan have just launched a pro-national security law campaign, and you also made a video clip, and now let's take a look at this clip.
好，我们看了这段宣传片，其实我知道陈先生之前都没有看过啊，所以我说是首发，很有港范儿的一个宣传片。我们导播间现在我听到了很多笑声哈。何先生，能不能为我们解释一下为什么要来拍这样一种风格的宣传片？当时是怎么想？
国安法是一个很严肃的一个问题，其实就是我们代表
And we have been members for 23 years, and yet we still haven't passed a law like this. But on May the 28th this year, the National People's Congress made such a decision for us, and this is very important for the security in Hong Kong. And so we have felt this great support from the public, and we have already received support from 2 million Hong Kong residents. So, given this atmosphere, we wanted to tell the public that national security is a good thing for Hong Kong. We are only targeting those who engage in secession, subversion, and terrorist activities. For ordinary residents here in Hong Kong, there is no negative impact at all, because we are only targeting those who want to engage in sabotages and damages and want to interfere with Hong Kong's internal affairs by colluding with foreign and external forces. So with bravery, we have enacted the Hong Kong security law, and we tell the world that this is a fact, this is a truth not to be challenged. This is an issue of principle, and we have to be steadfast in supporting this national security law. I learned from the lyrics of the last few sentences, and can give us more introduction. When we spread the word, you don't listen, and when you listen, you don't dare to do anything, and when you do something, you don't do things right. Can give us a interpretation of these lyrics? So we're using this rap style of the youth, because rap is very popular among the youth. So what does that mean? It means that, when I tell you what is true, you don't listen to me. And when you truly listen, you don't do anything. When you do something, it's always wrong. And when you do something wrong, you don't acknowledge your fault. And you don't correct your wrongdoings. And so why not do something to truly show your support? And this is our appeal to the young people, and because we are living in a society of division, and so we hope that we can strengthen communication through dialogue so that we can reduce these conflicts. Can you maybe see those lyrics in Cantonese? When I tell you, you don't do. When you do, you do things wrong. When you do things wrong, you don't acknowledge your faults. When you acknowledge your faults, you don't correct your faults. What else can I do for you? All right, thank you very much. And what is your impression after learning this MV? Well, actually, this is the first time that I have heard of this lyric, and I actually hear this lyric quite often in the Legislative Council. I hear it quite often from Mr. Ho, and I feel that when the central government was enacting the national security law, when I was walking on the street, a lot of young people came to me and they tell me that finally the central government hold out a supporting hand to bail Hong Kong out, because for a long period of time we were disrupted by those thugs. And there is a high degree of depression in a society, and you can also see that there is the involvement of a lot of external and foreign forces meddling in the internal affairs of Hong Kong. And you could see that some politicians in Europe and in the US, they are openly speaking some opinions violating the true principles of Hong Kong, and those is apparent, and this is vividly seen by the Hong Kong residents, and you could also feel this color-coded revolution on the street of Hong Kong. So that is why that when the national security law was enacted in central government, a lot of people applaud for this law in Hong Kong. And over the past few weeks, we have a lot of online signature campaigns, and within 10 days, we have roughly the signature from 3 million Hong Kong residents, and this can tell you how much support there is for this law in Hong Kong. So you shared with us your impression about the law from the National People's Congress, and there is one citation from former Vice Premier Deng Xiaoping, and now let's take another look at this citation. Do not think everything will be good when there is no interference from the central government, and do not believe that Hong Kong will become a land of freedom when there is no law and no management. So when Hong Kong becomes a land of subversion against the central government, then we have to interfere. So what is your view about this citation? Well, let me share with you my view about this. So when Deng Xiaoping said those words, he was very forward-looking. So, after returning to the motherland, despite the fact that we enjoy a high level of autonomy, we are a Hong Kong SAR, Special Administrative Region, and the 12th article of the Hong Kong Basic Law stipulates that despite a high degree of autonomy, we are subject to the leadership of the central government of the People's Republic of China, and the Hong Kong SAR government, according to the regulations of the Election Council, we have chief executives that is elected by 1,200 members of the election committee. And according to the basic law, where there is a command from the central government, the chief executive has to be compliant and obey such a command. And the oppositions, they have been saying that people are no longer, the opposition, they do not talk about one country, and they only focus on two systems. And they are using the 22nd article of the Basic Law and say that the central government shall not interfere with the day-to-day affairs of the Hong Kong SAR. So the oppositions, they are using the 22nd article as a context to object a lot of the agendas here in Hong Kong. And in 2019, and since July, there has been this riot, and we have to crack down on this riot. But we saw that those thugs, they continued to interfere with the social activities, and at the beginning of this year, there was this epidemic broke out, and then the National People's Congress passed a outline of the national security law for Hong Kong, and we could see that the result has been very obvious, and those thugs, they were very spoiled, and so I could see now that those thugs, they are receding in terms of their disruptive behaviors, and I personally welcome the enactment of this national security law for Hong Kong. So how about you, Mr. Chen? So when Deng Xiaoping said those words, he predicted that there would be some difficulties and challenges in implementing the one country, two systems. And we could also feel that there is strong level of confidence from the central government in one country, two systems, because the central government has entrusted the Hong Kong SAR government to handle most of its affairs. And the 23rd article of the Basic Law is a very important part of the Basic Law. But very sadly, after 23 years of returning to the motherland, there has been some new situations, and most notably, Hong Kong does not have the right to pass a security law by itself, and so that is why we have to remember what Deng Xiaoping has said, and when necessary, the central government must stand out and do something. So when we were formulating the Basic Law, we never thought that there would be those pro-independence activists in Hong Kong, and we never anticipated that there would be foreign forces interfering in the internal affairs of Hong Kong. So it's only natural for the central government to exert some management power over Hong Kong. So you mentioned some external forces, and some people say that in Hong Kong there is no law in Hong Kong safeguarding national security. As I have said earlier, when Hong Kong was having this riot last year, you could see a lot of foreign forces getting involved. And there is one thing very special, is that you see that the consulate of U.S. in Hong Kong, if you look at its staff size, it's the largest of all the U.S. consulates in any Asian cities, because the consulate is only in charge of visa application and handling people's visa, but why there were thousands of people working in that consulate. And also, whenever there is something political in Hong Kong, a lot of the European countries and America, they stand out in the first place, and they voiced a lot of objections. They expressed a lot of views against the views of the central government of China. So this is not what they should do, and this is exactly the evidence that they are interfering in the internal affairs of Hong Kong. So how about you, Mr. He? I echo with what Mr. Chen has said. So it has been 23 years since Hong Kong returned to the motherland, no matter it is at the national level or at the level of the Hong Kong SAR. It has been a very open city with very loose environments, and over the past 23 years, we have been recognized as the most open economy in the world. It is also exactly because of this that we get indulged in this so-called title, and we neglected our commitment to Article 23rd of the Basic Law. Actually, there is no contradiction between these two things, but in the eyes of some Hong Kong people, we are a free society. There should be no concern for freedom and security, and there is no necessity to legislate a law under the 23rd article of the Hong Kong Basic Law. And some people say that it's still too early. And so at the 5th year of our returning to the motherland, there was such discussion, and people said that there should be no problem. But then in 2003, there was this SARS epidemic. And because of the lack of social atmosphere and because of the SARS epidemic, so there were a lot of people protesting against the legislation under the 23rd article of the Hong Kong Basic Law. So we just suspended this effort. And then over the past 17 years, we never discussed issues about the 23rd article, and we let it by, seeing Hong Kong manipulated by powers in the US and in Europe. And then what happened? Last year, we got involved in a riot and chaos that was unprecedented in Hong Kong's history. So you could say that the people and Hong Kong economy are paying the price. And our economy suffered a great deal last year, and according to the economic report in the first quarter, Hong Kong's economy witnessed a contraction of 8.9% in the first quarter, and this is equivalent to 63 billion Hong Kong dollars, and this is not something insignificant. And if we continue to allow Hong Kong being manipulated by foreign powers, this is not a good thing. So that is why Ke has mentioned that we were too free and too open, and that is the problem, and that is where we need to throw the blame to, and that is why we need to save Hong Kong. Thank you very much. And but still, this year there is some oppositions, and the oppositions on the 20th, they had a strike, and they also had a public referendum, and I have learned that the result is not satisfactory to them. And what is your reaction to that? Mr. He, please. So let me be brief. The enactment of the Hong Kong security law is a deterrent for those oppositions, and in this year we saw some new legislations regarding the epidemic control, and so there has been some limitations on public activities outdoor, and so those are successful legislations, and I believe that the national security law for Hong Kong in the future will play a very positive role for Hong Kong. How about you, Mr. Chen? So in the framework of Hong Kong's law, there is no public referendum. So the oppositions, they used the public referendum to gain political points. And you could see that there is few participation from the society, and they only attract a very limited participation. And so you could see from this perspective that the Hong Kong people, they hold a very clear view about the Hong Kong national security law, and I believe that those standing on the oppositions, they will never stop their activity damaging social order, and they will continue to stigmatize the national security law for Hong Kong, and they will continue to mobilize people to support them. And so that is why we encourage and we urge our fellow members of the Legislative Council to convey the right voice and correct views to the society, and we need to clarify whenever there is some misunderstanding, and this is very important. Thank you very much, and we've seen a lot of support from online, from our viewers, and they have a lot of support to you both, and so they also say that you have very good Mandarin, and you mentioned the word deterrence, and it sounds very similar to CPPCC. So So a lot of people worry that they might be punished because of their free speech, and it's only targeted at a minority of groups, but they say it's targeted at everyone. So now let's take a look at one of the outlines, and the national security law for Hong Kong has clearly targeted 4 different activities: secession, subversion, terrorist activities, and collusion with foreign and external forces. So, Mr. Chen, what is your reaction to the opposition who say that a law targeting at the minority group is a law targeting everyone? So I think the fact speaks very clearly for itself, and it only targets a minority group of people. And when a law is enacted, you can still criticize the government, you can still call me bad names, and also call bad names of Mr. Ho, and it's okay. And as long as you do not pose a threat to national security, it's okay. As long as you do not collude with foreign or external forces, it's okay. So, for ordinary residents, the law is not even targeting them, and the national security law is a new phenomenon in Hong Kong. It's only natural that there is some concerns among the public, but you could see that the central government has full confidence in Hong Kong, and the Hong Kong HKSAR government has 99.99% of the interpretation of the law, and it's only at some very rarely seen scenario that the law should be interpreted by the central government. And also, the national security law for Hong Kong is also complying with some of the principles of international conventions, and because the legal system in the mainland is slightly different from that of Hong Kong, but from a technical perspective, it's taking into consideration the special conditions in Hong Kong, in particular Hong Kong's legal system. So that is why, in the process of legislation, it is also taking into consideration the legal conditions and environment in Hong Kong. So I urge the public of Hong Kong not to be affected by the hypes of the oppositions, because they have been for a very long time stigmatizing the legitimate work of the Hong Kong HKSAR and the central government. So Mr. Chen, as you have mentioned that Mr. Chen has mentioned that he's no longer afraid of being called bad names. And what is your reaction, Mr. Ho? So in Hong Kong, the freedom of speech, freedom of religion are protected, and this will not be affected. And when Hong Kong returned to the sovereignty of the mainland, we took into consideration that there were some special groups of people, and in the 14th article of the Hong Kong Basic Law, it was clearly stipulated that we have to protect the legal rights and interests of some Aboriginal groups. And when the law was introduced, I paid a visit to my hometown, and I got to know their reactions, people from my hometown, and each and every resident that I talked to, they expressed 100% support to this new law. So in Hong Kong, the most patriotic group is the Aboriginal groups, people who have been living in Hong Kong for hundreds of years, and they never sided with the oppositions, and because they have been through the period of colony, and they were very much looking forward to resuming their national identity, and you can feel this very strongly. And so that is why when Hong Kong returned to the motherland, the Aboriginal groups, they were the first to stand on the street to welcome the arrival of the PLA, People's Liberation Army. And so this time when the national security law for Hong Kong was introduced the Aboriginal groups of Hong Kong. They were the first to stand out to support this move, and so I can feel this very strongly, that the legal rights and interests of the Aboriginal groups of Hong Kong have been protected, and today's date has not been violated or hurt. So this is also clearly stipulated in the 23rd article of the Hong Kong Basic Law. So it is only natural for us to pass a law for the security of Hong Kong, and we have to do a lot of work for public relations. We have to do a lot of explanations. We have to tell the public the benefits of this law to Hong Kong, and we have to remember that in the basic law, our human rights are protected, and this is according to the International Convention of Human Rights. So there should be no worries in the public that when this law is enacted, we will have a more clearer path going forward. All right, so that is why we have to continue to do a good job in explaining the law to the public, and a lot of the views have just jumped in, and they wanted to see, they wanted to watch the clip again, and but not now. And when there is time at the end of the program, maybe we can play the clip again. So I asked for the patience of our viewers, and so just now we were talking about explanation, the effort to explain the law to the public, and so you know that in a process of legislation, there were opinions collected from Hong Kong. And what are the opinions that you expressed during this process? So in the process of legislation, the liaison office of the central government in Hong Kong, they collected opinions from us, and we have our representatives who participated in that process. So we shared our opinion to members of the CPPCC and also to the National People's Congress. And yesterday, the legislative body of the mainland went to Shenzhen, and they met with fellow members of the Legislative Council and members of the pro-establishment and also pro-democracy blocs expressed their views to representatives from the National People's Congress. And I understand that there will be another round of consultation online, and by that time we will feedback the opinions that I collected online so that the central government can get to know those opinions. So I hope that our residents can express their views through the platform of the Legislative Council. And I hope that this platform can be made accessible and available to Hong Kong residents so that they can directly submit their views to the central government. All right, how about you, Mr. Ho? So we hope to have a chance to allow the public to express their views, and we already have a lot of channels and platforms. I got used to expressing my views online, and online I have a lot of interactions, so it's very useful to help express the opinions online. And I also host some lectures, and also at the Legislative Council I have a channel to allow the public to express their views. And so we do forums, lectures, communication with the government, and the Central Liaison Office in Hong Kong is also communicating with us. So we have many different channels, and it's very wide-ranging channels. And the most important is that tell your opinions to us, to the central government. All right, I didn't catch two words that you just said, and you said there is activity, and what is that? So, Mr. Ho was actually referring to one of his online stream activities, and it's a military program actually. So, you just shared with some channels for the public to reflect their opinions. So now let's talk about execution and implementation. And so during last year's riots, and so whenever the police arrest someone, and then it should be released. And any response to that? So today, we also had a discussion. We know that one of the key link of any legislation is implementation, because without translating the law into a reality, it doesn't make any sense to pass the law in the first place. And also, if you have strong evidence to bring a case to court, well, let me tell you that this is the law of the nation. This is the law at the national level, and this is not at the district level under the framework of the 23rd article of the Hong Kong Basic Law. And so I hope that with great certainty that there will be jurisdiction from the legal system of the central government. But I hope that the legal system of the central government can entrust some of the jurisdiction to Hong Kong courts, and so the courts in Hong Kong should strengthen their exchanges. And so in 2019, so whenever the police arrest someone, the court would release them, and this is not good. And so the police is not working together with the court. So under the new law, we have to engage in some reforms. For example, what are the guidelines in sentencing, and so what is the preparation that the different levels of court should do, and so we as judges and members of the Legislative Council, we need not to confine ourselves to academic discussions, and we need to communicate with the public. And also, if it takes a very long time to adjudicate a case, it's wrong. It's justice denied. It's justice delayed is justice denied. So if you prolong a process, you're actually not practicing the principle of fairness and justice. And also, I hope that there is training collaboration between the judges here in Hong Kong and also in the mainland. So those are my three proposals. Mr. Chen, please. So when the police arrest someone, the court would release those people, and there is a lot of discussions on the mainland as well. But this is not a prevalent phenomenon in Hong Kong, and it's only a special phenomenon. It tells you that when a judge adjudicates a case, the views of the judge may be quite different from the public, and they do not see the strong level of dissatisfaction from the society. So we have a proposal that when there is such case in Hong Kong, the relevant lawyers should bring this case to a higher court so that it can be further adjudicated. And also, we need to draw lessons from other countries, and we need to set up a punishment committee so that we have a objective standard and the fair punishment is given to a law-breaking activity in an objective manner. And so from this perspective, we could see that the most important is the part of adjudication and implementation of the national security law for Hong Kong. So since Hong Kong returned to the motherland, and we do not have the concept or the notion of national security, and so in our legal system there is no such knowledge amongst the judge. So when there is such case, how do they handle the case and how do they address the situation? So this is very challenging. So that is why I also hope that there can be trainings, there can be a corresponding authority or court to deal with that. If the ruling of a case is relevant to the topic of national security, and then the chief executive can appoint several judges, but some people worry that this is an administrative interference in the legal system, but this is not right because all the judges are recommended by the Human Rights Committee, and it's also further appointed by the chief executive of Hong Kong SAR. We need to look at whether the judge has the knowledge and experience to adjudicate the case, and in this aspect, the chief executive can have some knowledge, so he or she can select the best judge to look at the case. And so this also reflects the high level of confidence the central government has in Hong Kong. As you know that national security related cases are very sensitive, and if the central government has the flexibility to entrust this power to the chief executive, it shows the confidence that we have from the central government. So just now we have covered a lot of the topics of the national security law for Hong Kong. We have a lot of comments from our viewers, and some of the viewers are saying that they are a loyal fan of you, Mr. Ho, on your military program online, and a lot of the viewers are saying that you follow a very clear logic. And now let's switch to something else. Let's go back to 23 years, and we are going to celebrate the 23rd anniversary for Hong Kong's return to China. Looking back to those 23 years, what are the most unforgettable memories that you have over the years? So, Mr. Ho, please. There were two very unforgettable memories. The first is the very day of Hong Kong returning to China. It was a raining day. It's actually one day before the returning of Hong Kong to the mainland, and so it was the raining day, and the next day the sky cleared up. So it's a very stark contrast. And the second unforgettable memory I had is that last year, when the riots and chaos was breaking out in Hong Kong, I worked together with a lot of the members of the Legislative Council to launch a campaign to support our police. So we support the efforts of the police. Because the police they were facing a lot of pressure from the oppositions, and the oppositions, they say that the police, they were using violence to crack down on the riots, and so, but we can see very clearly that this is simply false. And we learn in the first place that there is something going wrong in the society, and we understood that the police, they were just performing their duties, and so we launched the Support Police campaign, and the campaign received wide-ranging support from the Hong Kong residents. So you mentioned the sky turning clearer on July the 1st in Hong Kong, and we all remember that very clearly. And Mr. Chen, now let's switch to you. And you were 21-year-old in 1997. So what are your unforgettable memories in Hong Kong? So like Ho, on July the 1st of 1997, I just graduated from university. I just engaged in social service. I just joined the party. And it's the starting point of my political career. And when I saw the national flag hoist on the land of Hong Kong, I was more than touched and inspired. And I remember it was a rainy day, and I was joining the local government to welcome the arrival of the People's Liberation Army. A lot of the people, they were crying out in tears, and they welcomed the arrival of the PLA. And at that time, we realized that Hong Kong is part of China. It's a place that where we can govern ourselves. Over the past 23 years, there has been some twists and turns and turmoils, but in general, we have been moving forward. And now if you look at the stock markets and if you look at the Hong Kong economy, you see a lot of foreign companies settling their headquarters in Hong Kong. And this is the confidence that they expressed in Hong Kong. So in general, my most unforgettable memory is July the 1st, 1997. So you said that you were crying out tears, and it was a very touching moment. But the